Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where yesterday the president of Ukraine Zelensky dismissed the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine Syrsky and assigned Drapatyi to this position. I determined that the new commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine will be Drapatyi. Together with Evgeny Khmara and Pavlo Polisa, we determined how the configuration of the general staff of the armed forces of Ukraine should be updated. So this is a very important decision made by Zelensky because, as you may know, currently the Russians are about to begin their major offensive operation in the direction of the cities of Slovyansk-Druzhkivka and Kramatorsk, and this means that Drapatyi will be responsible for the Slovyansk-Druzhkivka defensive operation. So this is a very interesting situation, and the question is whether the current commander-in-chief Drapatyi is ready for this operation or not. Everything depends on this, and as you can see, Zelensky decided not to postpone his decision until the 18th of August, when the parliament of Ukraine returns from the summer vacation. He decided to make these changes yesterday in the evening. Anyway, let's wait and see how the things are going to develop. Meanwhile, the Russians continue their offensive operation through the Druzhkivka-Slaviansk agglomeration, and during the previous 12 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded. First of all, the Russians improved their positions to the southwest of the settlement of Druzhkivka. The Russians finished the battle for the villages of Pryiut and Pavlivka, and the Russians answered the settlement of Torske. And these are the changes on the ground between the dates. This is the end of the 21st of July, and this is the beginning of the 22nd of July of 2026. The battle for this village has begun. The Russians most likely will continue offensive operation along this river. This is the river of Kostiantynivka. The Russians will continue after the battle for Torske towards the settlement of Torske, then towards the settlement of Petrivka, then towards the settlement of Hrafske. The Russians would try to answer the city of Druzhkivka from the southwest through these villages. At the same time, according to different sources, the Russians also improved their positions through the northern parts of the city of Kostiantynivka. I would like to remind you that still pro-Ukrainian sources claim that the city of Kostiantynivka is under complete Russian control, but according to pro-Russian sources, first sabotage and reconnaissance groups have already answered the settlement of Oleksiievo-Druzhkivka, and the battle has already begun on the territory of Oleksiievo-Druzhkivka agglomeration. Moving further, another important update. Yesterday in the evening, pro-Russian sources stated that the battle for this big forest ended. And according to this report, we have adjusted the map. The report was published by a very reliable source who has connections on the ground with soldiers in this area. The Russians finished the battle for this territory, and as you can see, the Russians managed to approach the settlement of Mykolaivka and the Slovyansk northeastern stronghold from every single direction, with exception from the western one, and the battle for this citadel is about to start. The Russians will try to take this territory under complete control as soon as possible and as fast as possible, because control over the settlement of Mykolaivka opens the Russians the way towards the city of Slovyansk through the eastern direction. So the battle for the final battle of the entire Donbas arc operation is about to start, and this is going to be one of the most powerful and one of the most cruel battles since the beginning of the special military operation, because everything depends on this. Everything depends whether the Russians are able to finish the battle for the entire Donetsk region, or whether the Ukrainians are able to force the Russians to accept Ukraine's and Western demands to stop the war along the current line of combat contact and to begin negotiations from this configuration of the front line. Moving further, now let's discuss the situation through the northern direction, northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region. During the previous 12 hours, we received additional changes. First of all, the Russians confirmed that the settlement of Hrafske is under complete Russian control. Today, pro-Russian sources published a video where we can see several episodes when Russians were raising the Russian flag through the settlement. I would like to remind you that during the previous 2 or 3 weeks, we had reports that the Ukrainians counterattacked in this area, that the Ukrainians recaptured the village of Hrafske and established complete control, but today we received the report and proves that the Russians saved control over the settlement and the Russians continue advancing. Furthermore, as for the northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region, this morning the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation and the group of forces north reported that Russians captured the settlement of Artilne, and these are the changes on the ground between the dates. So this is the end of the 21st of July and this is the beginning of the 22nd of July. The Russians continue offensive operation in this area, trying to establish complete control through the eastern parts of the Kharkiv region, and it seems that the Russians in long-term perspective are tasked to establish complete control over everything to the east or along the eastern bank of the rivers of Syrsky and along the western bank of the river Oskol. So we are talking about the eastern parts of the Kharkiv region from between the border and the city of Izum. So this territory, most likely the Russians are tasked to take on the complete control within the rest of 2026 and within the 2027s if the conflict continues during this period of time. Now let's move further and let's discuss massive strikes. During the previous 12 hours, the Ukrainians attacked deep inside of the territory of Russia, and this picture was published yesterday in the evening, and according to this picture, the Ukrainians used 310 drones to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia, and according to this picture, we can see the biggest number of arrows are heading in the southern direction. And this morning and during the night, we start receiving first updates from the cities of Krasnodar and Nevinnomysk, and according to information we have, the Ukrainians with drones attacked first of all warehouses. So more warehouses were attacked and destroyed on the territory of Russia. The Ukrainians were launching drones using these approximate lines and approximate routes of attacks, and as a result of these attacks, these warehouses were destroyed. When talking about the city of Krasnodar, so this warehouse was destroyed, and we have videos about this. Let's take a look at them. In this video, we can see a very big fire and a very big black smoke over this object of logistics. As you can see, this object of logistics was reduced to ruins, so the Ukrainians managed to deal significant damage. Probably there were lots of products, goods that were destroyed, as you can see. So this is one of the most powerful strikes from the Ukrainian side when talking about results. And as you can see, this attack took place at the same time when the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, decided to change the commander-in-chief of the armored force Ukraine. So it's like a signal, it's like a message from the Ukrainian side. Another important thing that all warehouses that the Ukrainians have destroyed since the beginning of July, we're talking about big ones, belong to the same company. And during the previous night, one of the warehouses of this company was destroyed on the territory of Krasnodar, and the second one was destroyed on the territory of Nevinnomysk. So we have videos from this area as well, and here we have another big fire and the black smoke over this object of logistics. Obviously, this object was destroyed, was reduced to ruins without any chances to save it or to repair it or to extinguish the fire. And in this video, we can see this object of logistics, but from another angle, probably something that we have never seen before when talking about strikes on warehouses. And later, pro-Ukrainian sources published a very interesting statistics on this matter. So these are the warehouses that belong to this big company of Russia. And as you can see, 3 of them were destroyed, one of them in the area of the city of Elektrostali. This strike took place several days ago. We discussed this. Today, the Ukrainians attacked the Krasnodar warehouse and the Nevinnomysk. And today, the Ukrainians also destroyed the Nevinnomysk warehouse, and furthermore, according to these pictures, 2 warehouses were damaged. One of them on the territory of Kaledino, the biggest one, 250,000 square meters, and the second one was damaged in the area of the city of Kotovsk. As for this warehouse, there are 100,000 square meters. So as you can see, the Ukrainians are trying to destroy every single big warehouse of this company, and most likely likely the Ukrainians will continue, and during the next upcoming nights we will see more updates on this matter. So as you can see, the situation is very difficult. So we see that the Russians don't have possibilities to protect every single warehouse on the territory of Russia. So that is why we believe that during the upcoming night between the 22nd and the 23rd of July of 2026, the Russians will attack the territory of Ukraine using missiles. At least we received the report that everything is ready from the Russian side. For example, we received the report that the Russians have concentrated aviation in the area of the city of Saratov, and in English, the Russians have deployed additional forces in this area with the purpose to use them during the next massive attack. So this upcoming night could be very difficult for the Ukrainian side. As for the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, they reported today that the Russians during the night used 220 air vehicles, air means, to attack the territory of Ukraine using drones and missiles. The Russians were using missiles. There were several Iskander missiles used by Russia, and the Russians were attacking mainly the Odesa region. Lots of explosions were recorded. We received another video where we can see more vessels attacked by the Russian side, but the Ukrainians also attack vessels through the eastern parts of the Black Sea, and today pro-Ukrainian sources also published the video where we can see the drones of the armed forces Ukraine attacking vessels allegedly belong to the Shadow Fleet of the Russian Federation. These attacks took place through the eastern parts, and we have a report that the state of Kazakhstan was forced to suspend oil export through the Russian port infrastructure, which is a very important situation. Another important thing that the Russians during the night destroyed several gas stations in the area of the cities of Marganets and Tomakovka. So 2 gas stations were destroyed in this area. The Russians yesterday also destroyed several gas stations through the city of Marganets, and the Russians continue doing the situation, trying to reduce and to destroy as many as possible gas stations in depth of 150 kilometers from the line of combat contact. A warehouse was destroyed on the territory of the city of Zaporozhye. We're talking about these facilities where we can see trucks probably located and parked in this area, and the Russians attacked several gas stations in the area of the city of Kharkiv, in the area of the settlement of Savintsy. This facility was destroyed. We have a picture about this. Some barrack was damaged. Probably the Ukrainians were using them for military purposes, and the Russians once again struck the gas station on the territory of the city of Sumy, and this video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources. So, of course, we see that Russia is a very big state, which means that there are lots of facilities, lots of objects that could be attacked by Ukraine. And one thing is good, that the Russians, as of the beginning of the 22nd of July of 2026, don't have air defense means to protect every single object on the territory of Russia, which means that the Ukrainians will continue attacks, and these attacks will continue destroying different objects, warehouses, and logistics of Russia. And at the same time, I would like to point your attention that the Russians, for some reason, start bombing and attacking objects of both energy and logistics infrastructure of Ukraine through the western parts of Ukraine, which means that in coming months the Russians may attack this part of Ukraine as well, trying to destroy as many as possible warehouses, logistics, gas stations, and so on. So the conflict between Russia and Ukraine probably enters its decisive and the last phase. It's very difficult to say how long this phase will last, but obviously we are very close, we are very near to the end of the conflict. And that's it for the short video. The Military with Summary channel remains to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.